everybody back. Wonderful. Well, good to see everybody. First of all, thank you all for what you are doing. This is life-saving. We know that from, doing a lot of work out in the communities and everything. It really is a big deal, the work that you all are doing. And we'll introduce ourselves, but whatever ways we can be of support as best we can, we want to do that because we know that this is life-saving, this is meaningful work. So thank you all for what you're doing. So I'm Sarah Belcher. I oversee the crisis division with the Chapel Hill Police Department, which also incorporates the care team, which I'll let Heather introduce herself as the leader of that team. I've been with the department for over 13 years, working in the community in that way, and we, over the years, have supported cold weather cots in a variety of different ways. You may see us, you may see members of our team. We'll just kind of pop in and out. The crisis division has recently transitioned into having a crisis counselor on each patrol shift. We're still in the process of doing that. So one of our night shifts is actually covered. And so they're out and about in the community, and they love to find folks that are working non-traditional hours to chat with and all of that. So you may see them swinging by, just coming in and saying, hey, and making that connection as well. We are non-sworn. So we're the folks on our team have mental health, social work, and lived experience backgrounds. So I'll let Heather talk about the care team.
Yeah. So like Sarah said, my name is Heather Palmateer. I'm the lead crisis counselor for the care team. Definitely want to echo what she said about how important, absolutely critical this work is. Truly life-saving is a good word for it because it is. So again, thank you all so much for what you're doing. We greatly appreciate you. I know housing greatly appreciates you, and the community does as well. So again, thank you. Like Sarah said, care team is kind of like a sub-team of the crisis unit is how I describe it. So I'm a crisis counselor and have the capacity to co-respond going out with officers to certain types of calls. But our primary function on the care team is a little bit different. So we were created as an alternate response to law enforcement. So our team is directly dispatched from 911, and it's myself coming from social work, mental health background, a community EMT, and a peer support specialist, someone with lived experience, and that kind of makes up our mobile team. So we get out there in the community a lot, as do our co-responders, and these are folks that we're mostly pretty familiar with. We do meet a few new faces. We did last year in the previous cold cots, but these are some folks that we know and that we are working with. So certainly, however we can continue to support you all, Heather and Danielle, they know us. They've got our numbers. Like Sarah said, we've got crisis on night shift and working into the evening hours. So we are here to support you all, whether that's in a care team capacity without law enforcement, something we can do to support folks, or if we kind of need that, joint support. Both are accessible to y'all. So please don't hesitate to, connect and use your supports, use your resources. That's what we're here for. So
one of the exciting things about the care team is we just started moving forward with an expansion. So the care team is now serving the town of Carborough. But we're in the process of hiring a second team so that the care team can extend their hours. Currently, they operate Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, but with that expansion, we look to cover the hours of 6:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night. So there would be that resource. We don't have it yet, but there would be that care team support later into the evening down the road. So that would be another resource.
Absolutely. And if anything comes up during shift where you're like, hey, like those care team ladies that talk to us, I think this would be a good person for them to connect with, if if they're familiar or not. Again, that's information that can get back to us pretty easily. So let us know. We want to meet more folks. We want to support however we can. Last year we helped cover some of the cold weather staffing, so kind of know a little bit of how it works and what y'all will be experiencing and seeing. So yeah, exactly like Sarah said, hopefully there'll be more support down the line as well. But we're glad to be here with you guys, and we're gonna just go through some basic kind of signs of escalation, how to de-escalate, and then Sarah's gonna walk through a little bit more of the personal safety and situational awareness piece of it. So we'll try to make this pretty pain-free. We've got a PowerPoint, but this is just gonna be a conversation. We're just gonna be talking to y'all. We'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the things we're saying. So that feels good.
Yeah, and she's gonna transition the slides, so we're just gonna say slide.
Ooh, thank you. Slide, Heather.
Just like that, slide.
Awesome, yeah, so yeah, these are our little text link here. Next slide. So, yes, all behavior is a form of communication, absolutely. And we all know this. Right now I'm communicating to you all by not only projecting my voice and literally saying words, but you can just discern my mood, for example, for how I'm talking. So pretty calm tone of voice right now. I'm not like sitting here scowling, glaring at people. So, all of these are social cues. I talk with my hands a lot, big hand talker. So you can probably observe that we're pretty relaxed up here, pretty calm, no one's angry. And again, all of that is information you're taking in just by looking at me and hearing me. Of course, if I make a slight shift and suddenly I'm back in my chair, crossing my arms, like this, that tells you something completely different. And this is all the basic stuff. You guys know this. So whenever y'all are interacting with this population of folks, they're no different. They're just like any one of us. So their communication and what they're saying, what you're seeing from them, just like you would with anyone else on the street, it's going to be the same. So you go to the next slide. So just like I kind of model maybe a little bit of slight irritation with crossing my arms or something, there's going to be signs of escalation that you can look out for, things that are going to be very visible, easily observed by you. So these are some examples of some things that you might be on the lookout for. Obviously, if you see signs of this raised voice, if I suddenly start talking at you like this, it's going to be pretty obvious that I'm agitated. Aggressive posture, like I was modeling, bald, high-pitched voice. All of these things are going to be cues that someone is getting amped up. Again, a lot of this is just we're covering the basics here, getting a good review to make sure everyone's kind of on the same page about things. So these are not the only signs of escalation, and of course, depending on the person, things might look different. Some people, when they're getting escalated, they go quiet. So as y'all are working with these folks, and there are more and more nights where the shelter is active, you're going to get to know folks a little bit better. Some people you might already know, and you're going to start to be able to, tell like their cues and their signs. You're going to learn their personalities. And so if someone who's normally chatty is suddenly super quiet and pretty stone-faced, that might be a cue that something is going on. They might be escalated, they might be angry, maybe they're sad. We don't always know, but we definitely want to pay attention to some of these major giveaways for sure. So of course, what we have up here is a list of things that are obviously violent behavior. Any of this is going on, this is going to be a law enforcement. We don't want anyone to put themselves in harm's way. If there's a safety risk, call 911 immediately. We have officers who are in that downtown area or Area 1, which is kind of all around that MLK area, and I know it's going to be the same thing for Hillsborough as well. If someone is making you feel unsafe, God forbid they're brandishing a weapon, which the rules of the shelter are they're not supposed to have any. But if you see something like that, people being threatening, intimidating you, don't take any chances. That is something that law enforcement needs to be present for. So of course, if something like this is going on, property damage, that's something that we've experienced in the past at cold weather cots. So these are real things that can occur, and we want to take extremely seriously to make sure that not only you guys are safe, but also our community and the person who might be in a state of crisis or agitation. We want to make sure everyone is safe. So be on the lookout for those signs of escalation. They can lead sometimes to violent behaviors, but not all the time. Just because someone is escalated, maybe they are modeling that agitated behavior, their voice is raised, and they're sometimes even getting in your face, doesn't necessarily mean there is going to be violent behavior. So one does not automatically equal the other. but they can be, kind of raise your red flag a little bit. You're going to want to create that, personal boundary. And Sarah will, of course, talk more about that, of kind of the steps and, how to work through that. But again, we are just kind of creating a foundation right now for, getting from point A to point B and what happens, where we go from there. So, we go to the next slide. So yeah, people don't just snap. And what we mean by that is not that people can't get escalated all of a sudden. I know some of the folks I know in this room, and I know you've seen, like, sometimes people do just like kind of seems like randomly get angry. That's not what we're talking about when we say people don't just snap. Sometimes there's stuff going on behind closed doors that we might not know about, and it might feel like someone just randomly snapped and got angry at us, bit off our heads or something. What we mean by people don't just snap is someone who, on the whole, is calm. Like, just to use myself for an example, I'm sitting here, I'm calm. Sarah knows me, sees how I am on like a daily basis. I'm not just gonna all of a sudden come to work with a weapon one day. I just snapped one day. That's kind of what we're talking about. So people don't just snap. If you're seeing those signs of agitation and aggression, those are cues that someone is dealing with something. It could be substance use related, it could be mental illness, it could be interpersonal violence in their relationship, anything. So all of those are factors that we want to be mindful of when we are dealing with our unhoused folks. And ultimately, if these are people sleeping on the streets, I wouldn't be in the best and brightest mood either if I was sleeping on concrete at night. So these are just all things to consider. Just because someone is dealing with some of these factors does not mean that they are going to react to you in a violent way, even if they are escalated. But yeah, again, just kind of want to reiterate, setting this baseline. So we can go to the next slide. Concerning behavior, so some of these are things that you might notice right away from working with our population of unhoused folks. So going into the shelter, it's possible that quite a few of them maybe haven't had an opportunity to bathe recently. You may notice an odor or that someone appears to be a little unhygienic. We also have people in our unhoused community who may have mental illness. They may have schizophrenia or bipolar. They may be experiencing psychosis. You may notice some of these things right off the bat. And of course, these are concerning behaviors, and they are things that we want to pay attention to. For some folks, it might be an indication that they are not at their baseline. If we're coming into work one day, and typically your coworker who's very put together is observing some of these, that might mean something very different than what it might mean for our unhoused folks, where some of this might be the baseline. So again, these do not necessarily indicate that escalation will occur. They are things to be aware of and keep in mind, and that they could be just different components that people are dealing with. You come in and now you're in kind of a tight confined space with a lot of different folks. If you also have some of these things going on, people can get tense. So again, just more of what we want to be on the lookout for, creating context and a greater picture for all of us. So go to the next slide. This is like, kind of just like breeze through this a little bit quicker, but if you do happen to have history on a person, which some of the folks you might know and you may know their history, other folks you're not going to know and are going to be strangers, so some of this may or may not be applicable if you know them or not. Obviously, if you do and you are aware of like, hey, Johnny came into the shelter and I know he has a history of assaulting others. Let's say that's just knowledge that you have ahead of time. So of course, if you have that base knowledge and then he's coming in and you see him getting agitated, you see him mirroring some of that language of the balled fist, maybe he's getting red in the face, he's getting angry, his voice is raising, with some previous knowledge of assaultive behavior in the past, again, that's something that we want to take that seriously. So not necessarily an indication something is going to happen, but these are the kinds of things that we want to pay attention to and put together because they can be potential indicators of escalation, violence, agitation, what have you. So again, may or may not know someone's history, but if you do, keep it in mind as you're interacting with them and getting to know them. If you know their triggers, be aware of that. So this is a video about gun violence in schools, but I think the kind of subject matter is still relevant to the situations that we might find ourselves in when we're dealing with folks in crisis or who are agitated. So if you can play the video.
Real quick before to play this video, just to get a little bit more context, like Heather said, it is in a school setting, but some of the themes in this can be applicable in a variety of settings. There is nothing graphic in this video, so I do want to make that clear. It does depict gun violence in a school. But I think as you're watching this, pull out some of the themes that you're seeing, and then we'll talk about how that might relate into this, to any space. Part of what we're talking about today, or what we're talking about today, all the tools that we're giving you are things that could be used in a variety of different environments, not just in the cold weather shelter, but in a variety of different environments. It could be the work setting, it could be the community, it could be whatever. So all this is about just giving different tools and resources to draw upon. And if it does not work, that's okay. We can talk through the video, no problem. Has anybody ever seen this video before? Okay.
It's a really good one.
I don't see it.
It needs to be connected to the internet. So I can talk through just the theme of what kind of comes out of it. So if you ever watch this video, it basically, and we're going to spoil it, there's a spoiler alert to what we're going to share, but basically it shows this young man here, he's writing some messages to, like on the tables, like carving, and he's communicating with another person. At the end, you see him meet that person, it's another female, and they're like, hey, you must be so-and-so. But throughout the video, it shows clips of this young man right here that has headphones on. And it shows a variety of clips. So the first clip it shows of him is he's looking at a gun magazine. A next clip it shows that he is giving a young girl the finger. Another clip it shows him being bullied at his locker. Another clip then shows him actually pointing a gun in a social media post. So basically what we take out of this video is people can see different pieces of behaviors that in and of itself may not be anything. He may be looking at a gun magazine because he's a hunter and he has an interest around that. He may be flipping that girl off because it's his sister and he's mad at him. It could be somebody he just broke up with. But when you start to pull all the pictures or the pieces together, it tells a bigger, more concerning picture. Again, not to say he's going to go on and engage in any type of violence, but it may mean that he needs some support. Same with all those, concerning behaviors and things that were listed out. Doesn't mean necessarily anything is going to escalate or rise to the stand, but it may mean that they need some resources and support. And, in the community that you all are working with, there's a lot of resources and support through SORAD, through the partnership, through us, that, it's just things to kind of make note. And hey, can we connect you with, are there other resources that we could draw upon or alert to do some outreach to folks? And then, again, that's where it kind of goes back to, and we're going to talk about, when we talk about situational awareness and stuff, communication. And so I want that to kind of remain kind of a factor in your brains, is why communication is so important. We're going to talk about some aspects of that too.
Awesome. So yeah, I think this slide really kind of says it all. And you can go to the next slide as well. But your approach does change how the situation can unfold. We cannot always control how someone reacts to us or reacts to a situation, but we can control our reactions and our feelings about the situation by being aware of how we're walking into the door, what biases that we may have or carry with us, just keeping our mood in check. So the only thing we ultimately have control over is what we do with our reactions. Sometimes we're limited, and we can't force someone to de-escalate if they're just super escalating, for lack of a term. So, but there are things that we can do that can strongly influence someone. So now we're gonna get a little bit more into the de-escalation side of things. So we've talked about all of these things that may or may not be potential risk factors, signs and symptoms to watch out for, being aware of history, and how all of that can tie together. Like Sarah said in the video, it paints a broader picture. So we have the context for escalation, what that can look like, what it may or may not mean. So now let's talk about how we kind of move out of that space. So kind of three main sections that we're going to kind of go over, and these are some of the main tools that we can utilize to address someone who is in an agitated state. So go to the next slide. So adjusting your mindset. Go to the next slide. So the customer service mindset, sometimes for myself, whenever I'm doing work in the community, like I will literally have almost like a mental image or like visual of, for me it doesn't, some people say like put on your customer service hat. For me it's more of like a bubble that I imagine around myself, so kind of a silly little thought, but even coming up with a visual for yourself, like okay, like I'm entering into customer service mode, I'm entering into crisis counselor mode right now, so whatever I'm dealing with, personally, of course I'm still carrying it with me because I'm human, but to the best of my ability, I'm going to go into a little bit of a different version of Heather right now, where I'm going to put my best face forward, and I am going to remember that folks here are in some vulnerable positions and may be dealing with a lot of different things. So I'm always going to remember whatever may come at me that's negative, not to take it personally. And sometimes, like Heather, who just like sits at home on her couch in her pajamas, like she might take things personally sometimes. Like she might be a little sensitive, and that's why I imagine like that hat or that bubble, because that's not the Heather that I'm trying to bring to work. I'm bringing in crisis counselor Heather, or housing or cold weather cot volunteer Heather, whatever might fit. So create that bubble, that mental visual for yourself. Remember not to take things personally. Folks may react to you negatively or positively based on things that we may have no knowledge about. We might remind them of a teacher who was mean to them in second grade. It could be something that we truly just have no control over, and that's why I say we can't do anything about how someone reacts to us, but we can control how we react. So, and yeah, just to reiterate, being aware of unconscious, biases. Likewise, maybe you see someone who reminds you of a student who bullied you in middle school, and you don't really like that person as much. So just being aware of what you are bringing to work or to the cold weather cot that day, I think is a really big step in helping maintain, your own self-control and being aware and mindful of your own reactions. So go to the next slide. Active listening, this is definitely a big one. Next slide again, sorry. We can go to the next slide again. Oh, sorry, I didn't see it. So, yes, so the difference between listening versus hearing. So I'd be curious to hear from y'all. What do you guys think, like, just so we have the words, listening versus hearing, what do y'all think the difference is? Just shout it out.
Hearing is just sense, we all automatically do it.
Yeah. And how might that be different from listening? Or well, for me, and I think kind of you're getting at, I think you're kind of insinuating a little bit here, is, anyone can, and honestly, you kind of use them interchangeably. For me, I kind of think of like, anyone can hear, anyone can audibly take in information. You guys are hearing me right now. You hear the sound of my voice and hear me talking. But going in and listening, that active listening, engaging, there's a difference between like sound going in one ear and right out the other. Like I could be talking right now and you'd be totally ignoring me, tuning me out, thinking about what you're gonna have for dinner tonight. But to be really listening, paying attention to someone, not only hearing what they're saying, but processing it, digesting it, and doing something with that information, coming up with a thoughtful response in your own head. Listen, maybe even paying attention to maybe someone is saying something, and maybe if you're really paying attention, you can kind of read between the lines and understand maybe they're really trying to tell you something else. So whenever we're engaging with folks, a lot of times you can kind of tell when someone is truly paying attention to you or not. If I'm having a conversation, with Sarah and she's like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, Heather, sounds good. That might be a cue to me like, okay, Sarah's like checked out right now, which she would never do. But if Sarah's like, but if Sarah's like really listening to me, we're making eye contact, she's nodding her head and she's like, I hear this is what you're saying, maybe even reflecting back in her own words what she has heard from me. That's telling me like she's paying attention to me, she's making an effort to understand me, and is maybe even clarifying for if she has misunderstood something or misheard something from me. Don't be afraid to ask folks, like, I heard you say this, is this what you meant? If you're not sure, a lot of times people will simply, easily clarify for you, and if that makes them agitated, that can be a sign, again, of some other things that they might be dealing with. So active listening, just showing up for someone and letting them know you have my full attention, and I want to be in this conversation with you, showing genuine interest, can go a really long way. So, yeah, just kind of some stages of active listening, which, I think we're kind of, receiving the information, understanding, remembering, evaluating, responding. All these are just kind of what we've talked about, of like, I'm intaking this information, I'm doing something with it, and I'm returning something back to you. So, all right, so now, the de-escalation part of de-escalation. So creating safety, maintain dignity, break the rhythm, set limits. Again, Sarah's going to touch more on maybe kind of the creating safety factor, but to just at least to touch on that a little bit. If folks are escalated and they're coming up and they're getting in your space, it's okay to step back. It's okay to say, you're making me uncomfortable, or, I want to support you, but I can't do that while you're yelling at me. Can you please lower your voice or take a step back? Those are boundaries that are perfectly appropriate and okay to set. I've been in a situation before where I had a gentleman who was very escalated and agitated with me, got very close up in my face and pointing his finger a lot. And I took the steps that I needed to in that moment to create a personal safety boundary for me. So don't, be afraid to ask folks for what you need. And of course, again, if things continue to escalate and you feel unsafe, that's where, we need to get, law enforcement or public safety there to ensure that everyone is safe. So while we're doing this, of course, throughout the whole thing, we do want to maintain a person's dignity. We're not name calling or disparaging anyone. We're not looking down at people or making faces for them. And again, y'all know this stuff. We want to treat people with respect, and a lot of times they'll give us kind of what we give them. So if you're dismissive and have an attitude, chances are you'll get that back. But if we're respectful and friendly, hopefully we'll get that back as well. If we don't, it's happened to care team plenty of times. I know sometimes we'll show up and maybe folks are agitated and they don't want to talk with us. It's okay to give folks their space too. Just in the same way that we might want them to give us space. Breaking the rhythm, I think, might be my favorite de-escalation tactic. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. There's a bunch of different tactics. On the care team, I know we have humored or laughed our way out of more than one escalated situation. Don't be afraid to use humor, making a joke. I mean, of course, obviously you want to read a situation and be mindful of the person that you're talking to. Not everything is going to land well with everyone. But if you feel like you're in a situation where you have enough rapport, or you use your judgment and common sense, and feels like, hey, I think this is a time where I can utilize humor that might help de-escalate, do so, absolutely. Also, another way of breaking the rhythm, y'all were talking about like snacks and stuff earlier. So I know some things may be resource dependent, so just with what's available to you. But I know on several occasions, whenever I've been speaking with someone who was upset, escalated, agitated, talking up here, like they're really mad, that hyper, kind of intensive voice. I'll just be like, hey, I'm so sorry, like I'm a little thirsty right now, like would you like a bottle of water? I'm gonna get myself one. Or hey, it's really, whenever in the summertime, it's really hot out here, would you like some water? Kind of throwing that in there, breaking the rhythm, it can kind of almost like jolt someone out of like their escalation for a second. There's another situation I can think of where it's myself and a lieutenant, and there was a man we were speaking with. He wasn't upset at us, but he was very upset with the situation he was dealing with, and was just kind of unreceptive to talking with us. Wasn't really like calming down with us, kind of validating and active listening to him. So I just said like, hey, can I get you some water? And he was like, yeah, sure. So then I left and came back and gave him water. And then just that interruption, him opening the water, drinking it. After that, he started to cool down a little bit, and then he did become more receptive to some of our active listening, supportive counseling efforts. So anything like that you can do. If a snack is available, like, hey, can I get you a snack real quick? Or, how about an extra blanket? Again, whatever is available to you. So I really like breaking the rhythm. And then, yes, setting limits, having boundaries, and being honest with folks about what you do and don't know, and what is and is not in your capacity. It's totally okay to, punt it and say, like, I don't know that information, but I'm happy to find out for you. Or let me see if I can get that information to you. If folks feel like you're really serious and are truly trying to put in an effort to help them out, a lot of times they can calm down a little bit from that as well. That I hear you, like, I know that must be so challenging that you're dealing with. Going back to that validation piece, we don't necessarily want to say, I know exactly how you feel, even if we have been through a similar situation, because every situation is a little different and we don't know exactly how someone feels. So we want to be mindful of some of our language around that. We want to show empathy and compassion and understanding, but not pretend that we know exactly what someone is dealing with, because that can cause them to escalate again. Like, you don't know what I'm dealing with. But do show compassion. And if you're showing someone that you care about them, whether it's by listening or finding out information or getting them a resource, that can definitely be a very effective de-escalation tactic as well. So, go to affirmations. These are just some things that kind of just like what I was saying, some actual things that you can say. How can I help you? Tell me more. Like, I want to better understand you. I know this could be confusing. Let's see what we can do to figure it out. These are just some examples of things that you could say. Of course, this is not a comprehensive list, but just as situations are coming up, just maybe keep some of these phrases in the back of your mind. Like, I want to listen to you. Like, tell me more. I want to understand.
All right.
Skip through the activity.
So yeah, just a couple of fun pictures to illustrate situational awareness and being aware of your surroundings. I'm gonna assume these are AI generated, hopefully, but yeah, just some examples. So we've given you all a couple of handouts. One highlights some of those de-escalation strategies. There are different strategies that can fall within that breakdown that Heather just gave. So something that you can go back and look. If you have any questions about these, or like, what does this mean, or how do I do that? Feel free to ask us. We're happy to talk through that. The second handout that you all have is just some recommendations, some best practices around situational awareness and personal safety. Not all of these are going to be applicable for your environment, the cold weather cot, or how things are set up, but they're just things to think about and draw upon should you need to use them. Next slide, please. Okay, so we can't watch this video. I'm not even going to tell you about this video. I would encourage looking it up. So if you just YouTube or kind of Google situational awareness, look at basketball. I think this is directed towards cyclists, but if you haven't seen this before, I don't want to spoil it, and I would encourage you to look at it and just try it out. It illustrates situational awareness a little bit. So we didn't skip that. You have seen that? Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we're going to go through these things. We're just going to walk through this sheet here, okay? So the first part is knowing your surroundings, being aware of your environment. Can be knowing where your entrances and exits are. That's so that you know how to safely get out should you need to. You can direct others to get out safely, but you can also be aware of who is coming in and out of your space. Being aware of your blind spots. What are the areas that you can't see? And what is the accessibility around those? Are there ways that you can secure that a little bit more? Are there ways you can kind of keep an eye on that? Is there a place you can position where you're sitting and kind of hanging out that you have some awareness, but are still, your exits are still accessible to you. Being aware of those high traffic areas. There was some mention of the bathrooms and just being aware of those things, who's going in and out of those. Are there groups of people that are going in that space? Being mindful of that. Lighting and visibility, personal positioning. We talked about knowing your exits, making sure you have a clear path to and from your exits. Again, not just for your safety, but safety of everybody in that space. Avoid being in areas that you're cornered. So if it does come to a place where maybe there's a fire or an environmental hazard or somebody is escalated, do you have a safe way to get out and to access help? Checking systems, making sure you have your fire extinguishers. I don't know if there's going to be things like AEDs, where your Narcan is, making sure that the exits are, lighted up. If there's any issues with that, you need to make sure that you're letting your folks know so that those can be addressed and that safety can be maintained for yourself and everybody else. Again, a recommendation may not be applicable, but if folks have medications, sharp objects, things, can they be secured in kind of a secured storage area? Something to think about. Also know your people. Donna gave a great example of know their names, make eye contact with them. That's just not good customer service, but it does create safety. Like Donna said, if somebody knows that they know their name, you know who they are, they're probably gonna be more cautious about certain things than if, they feel like there's some anonymity around them or kind of, what's going on. That's also getting to know who they are as a person, like Heather mentioned, their personality. What is their quote unquote, it's a clinical maybe term, but baseline. Who are they in general? So that way, if they come in and, maybe they're having a medical crisis or there is a mental health crisis or something else going on, you're gonna be more in tune to that and what they might need some help around. Knowing who's coming and going. Knowing what might be, and you're gonna get to maybe know what are some trigger points or stressors for folks. Do they have some sensory related things and they're really stressed around people? If there is a dog that's coming into the facility, do they have some concerns or fears around dogs, and how can we manage that? That's gonna be helpful in managing stress and just anything that could be escalating factors. If you know that there's a couple of folks that really have some beef with each other and maybe don't need to be kind of in close quarters with each other, can you work around, maybe making sure that their cots are in kind of opposite ends of the room, things like that. And then safety in numbers, if at all possible. I know that you all talked about certainly if, like last year, if numbers grow, does that mean we need more staff support? To keep an eye on folks. If things do, if a crisis does come up, do you have that safety numbers? Somebody that can call for support while another person is rendering aid to a situation, things like that. Communication, what tools do you have? Cell phones, other tools that might help with reaching out for help if needed. Again, some of those systems we talked about, fire extinguishers, Narcan, AED, where are all those tools from a safety standpoint? Having a code word is another suggestion. If staff have kind of a code word, if you go into a hospital setting, you hear things like code blue, code red, and those mean different things for different levels of what support is needed. Do we need to call 911? Do we need, something else that you're kind of saying in maybe even a safe and discreet way? Another strategy that, folks could consider. Making sure you have your emergency number, so everybody is getting that binder, is that correct? And we'll have the contacts in there. Of course, everybody knows 911. We'll talk about calling 911, even texting 911. But just knowing what, resources you have to draw upon should an emergency. Let's say there's a backed up toilet, we don't have any restroom, but who you're gonna call. Making sure you know who you're gonna call in various different emergencies that could come up. Shift briefing and debriefs. This is where that communication is important. It can be helpful for the folks who are, maybe wrapping up at and I don't know, I think it's just the 7 to 7 this time though, right? So there really isn't that, but maybe for the next shift, the next night, if you have different staff, how are you communicating, things that could be going on. We talked, we saw, well, we didn't see the video, but we talked through that video that folks could be seeing different pieces. Doesn't mean it has to be around, but maybe is there a health condition that somebody is monitoring? Maybe somebody had went into a diabetic crisis the night before, and knowing where a resource is around that, making sure that there's good information exchange so that folks are prepared should something come up within the next shift or down the road. And then notification of any changes. If a piece of equipment gets moved, where is it located? If there's additional staffing that's coming in, if there are additional people, being aware of any type of major changes so that there's no surprises and people know what they're working with and the resources that they have. Crowd management. So, especially if we're having to extend our resources a little bit, making sure that we're doing those in safe ways, making sure that there's clear pathways to exits, throughout the space, that there's clear routes. People know where to go if there is an emergency. Is that something that's communicated? Is that something that, maybe there's some signage that's posted to help people, know if a fire or if something were to happen, how do they get out? How do they, get to a place safely? Monitoring for stress points, close quarters, limited beds, long lines, lack of privacy. Those can be stressful for folks. They can be stressful for folks who are dealing with a lot of other things. Maybe there's even some trauma in their background, all of that. There's a lot of things that folks are coming in with that we want to be mindful of. How can we, decrease that stress, for folks. Heather talked about boundaries, I think just again highlighting, being careful, avoiding personal disclosures or giving out personal information, being consistent. Consistency can really help with, especially around expectations, because if somebody lets something go for one person, others are gonna, probably have that same expectation. Let me ask it, if somebody gets an extra blanket or something like that, others are gonna be wanting and expecting the same thing. So being consistent with your rules and your guidelines and what you're communicating to people. And then avoid things like handling money, personal property, if at all possible, being careful around those things. If there is an immediate concern of danger or an immediate safety concern, calling 911. I'm gonna let Heather talk about that in a minute, because she's got some behind the scenes things that she can share, actually being trained as a call taker in the 911 communication center. Where are your alarms? How do you access those type of things? Knowing evacuation, any lockdown procedures, making sure that if there's any changes in any of those, all that is being communicated to staff. And then trusting your gut. Listen to your gut. If something is saying, this doesn't feel good, this doesn't feel okay, listen to that and draw upon your resources, whether that's calling 911, whether that's calling upon your support staff. As human beings, we tend to reason out or rationalize out what our gut may be screaming at us, and that is a survival mechanism from way back in the days, the early times. So we really need to be in tune and listening to that. And if it doesn't sit well with you, reach out for support. Let's see if there's anything else talked about sharing concerns, reporting concerns early and often. So that again, that goes back to that discussion around that video. If there are concerns, if something again is weighing on you that doesn't feel right, who are you communicating that to? Who do you need to let know? Or is it the coordinators? Again, is it reaching out for help? Is it, something that, a crisis team or something can help out with? All right. Yeah, we can go on to calling 911. So I'm gonna let Heather talk through this so she can give you some behind the scenes of that too.
Yeah, so in the event that you do have to call 911, if you need some additional support depending on the situation, thought we could just provide a little bit of insight of like what actually happens when you call 911, because for most people it's not something that you do every day. So for Orange County, there are 2 numbers that ring into the communications for the 911 center. So the first is 911, as we all know. That is the emergency number. That is the Get Here Now number. There is also a non-emergency number for Orange County that rings into the 911 center as well. Both numbers are 24/7, 365. How it rings into the 911 center, any 911 call that's placed will ring to the telecommunicator station. They have like 5 monitors, very impressive. And it makes like a really loud, like, woo, woo, like, you know, gets your attention kind of ringtone. And that's a cue of like, this is a 911 call, this is a priority call. If you dial into 911 using the non-emergency number, which is a 919 number, so all the digits, it will ring to the 911 center with like a ring, 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 ring kind of ringtone. So it signals to communications that, okay, someone is trying to reach us, but if at the same time there's like 20 911 calls coming in, the 911 calls are going to get the priority. So if it's a situation that's like a, we need someone here now, don't call the non-emergency number, call 911. If it's a, yeah, like I think this situation, like someone should probably come down here, but there's no immediate safety concern. Like I feel like this isn't like a crisis, immediate safety situation. You feel comfortable with it, you can call the non-emergency number. But if there is a safety concern and you're feeling unsure, always err on the side of caution and call 911. Whenever the dispatcher answers you, if you call 911, the first thing they're going to ask you is, they're going to say, Orange County 911, what is the address of your emergency, or the emergency, excuse me. If you can get out nothing else, say the location. If you can, say it 2 times. That is the most important thing, even if you have nothing else, because 911, the communication center, they have a special code for, hey, this is a unknown call. All we have is the address and how the caller may have sounded. There is a code for that, and they will still dispatch that. And depending on what they may have heard in the background, officers will come, lights and sirens as needed. So if nothing else, say your location. That is the most important piece of information, or the location of the emergency. If you call in at the non-emergency number, they'll probably say Orange County Communications, like this is so and so, or how can I help you? So it's going to be more of a laid back interaction. But again, to stick to the 911 side, they're going to ask you for your location first. They're going to ask you for it twice, and that is just on their end for them to be able to confirm and verify that they have got things correct. Who in here has a smartphone? Raise your hand. Okay, I think that's everybody. If you have a smartphone from within the last 5 to 10 years, you have a feature on your phone called Rapid SOS, more than likely. And so that is a program that our communication center is able to use to get a pretty good pinpoint to your location. There is a radius, so it could be within 100 feet or so. And depending on how long you stay on the phone, it can become more and more accurate. But it is a really great way for folks to be able to get location. So even if you call and you can't get your location out, there is still a way that communications can figure out where you've called from. So that's a little bit about the location piece. They're going to do everything they can to confirm and verify that. They will also ask you to verify your phone number. They may ask you for that twice as well. And then they'll start to ask you, tell me exactly what happened. And they're going to want you to give them a kind of a brief synopsis of the situation. Let's say 2 individuals are fighting. So you're going to call 911. They're going to say, what's the address of the emergency? Repeat the address. What's the phone number you're calling from? Tell me exactly what happened. Let's say you say, 2 men are fighting and one of them pulled out a knife, just for an example. So they're gonna take that, and they have a way that they code that. For anything that you might tell them, they have a code for. There are a lot of different codes, but they're gonna code that, and then based on what you tell them, they're gonna ask you a bunch of other follow-up questions. Some of them may or may not be relevant to what's going on, but there is a reason why they are asking questions, even if they sound strange. And that is just to get information for officers, EMS, fire, crisis, whoever is responding out, to make sure that our responders are safe and the community members are safe and we get the right response to you all. So it might feel like a lot of questions, but there is a reason why they're asking. And again, depending on what might be going on, they may give you some specific instructions. They may instruct you to remove yourself from the situation. They may advise you to just do what you feel comfortable with. They might give you certain steps. So all in all, I say most 911 calls take anywhere from 3 minutes to 10 minutes, depending on what's going on, how urgent it is, how long it takes an officer to get on scene. So that's about what you can. There have been calls that have been faster and calls that have been longer, but that's just a rough average. So that's just a kind of a basic breakdown of some of the things you might expect if you do have to call 911. I know it feels scary, but all of our telecommunicators are very well trained. They go through a very intensive training process, and they are trained and equipped to handle whatever you throw at them over the phone. So just be honest with them about what's happening and don't hesitate to call if you need help.
The other thing too is during all those questions, they're coming. They're dispatching the responders. And so, while that can feel like it's taking forever and it feels overwhelming and a lot, they are dispatching. They're already folks on the way. They're still communicating information to them, but they are on the way. So that's the other thing we want to make sure. The other thing too is in Orange County, you can text 911. A lot of folks don't know that, but you can do that. So just be aware of that. We have had a couple of those come through the police department, but that is another capability too.
And they have a language line service as well. So it seems like everyone in here is an English speaker, but if there were a need for it, they do have language line access, and they can dial in to that service and connect folks with whatever language might be needed. So that is also an option as well.
The other thing too with the emergency, non-emergency number, we don't want you all to be too tied down to that. If you need to call 911, if you need a response, just go ahead and call 911. There are other situations like we may call the non-emergency number if we're trying to get an on-call CPS or APS social worker or something like that. But, we don't want you to kind of sit and wait back and kind of like, oh, well, I'm not sure if it's an emergency. I don't really know. It could be. Just go ahead, Oh, and to do our best, we have to be at our best. This can be tough work. And certainly if you all have a situation where, there is something that comes up, it could be a medical emergency, it could be a conflict, it can take a little bit of a toll on you. It can be unsettling. Make sure you are taking care of yourselves as well. Make sure you are leaning upon your supports, the coordinators, the other partners, the other colleagues, other resources out there. Again, same for us. To do our best, we have to take care of ourselves and be at our best. So if there's anything that comes up that just feels overwhelming or has impact on you, reach out to somebody. Whether, like I said, your coordinators, your colleagues, us as a resource, whoever. We want to make sure that you all feel well supported in the work that you're doing. Questions? Great. Thank you all again. Thank you for letting us chat with you, and thank you for the incredible work you all are doing.
We appreciate y'all so much.